All right, good evening, RPG Limit Break. We have a showcase here for you for our Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide Moogle Cup tournament. I'm joined here in the booth with Dragon Lady K. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Hopefully you're doing well as well. Getting pretty excited to see how this is going to go tonight with our current racers. Obviously, for our Moogle Cup that's coming up here soon, Moogle Cup 4. Great start for brand new players to learn the ropes, and we've got one of our mentors, and from what I hear, we have our Chocobo racing dummy, which is KwehstopherWarken. So I think this is going to be a great night and a great race.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Sigil going up against KwehstopherWarken. I have to mention it every single time. One of the greatest names that we have in the community. Just I'll never not be upset that he grabbed that before anybody else could think of it. Excellent job. So tonight we're going to be playing Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide, and just to sort of explain that really quick, it is a Final Fantasy VI randomizer, and much like a lot of other randomizers, a ton of things are shuffled around. So for this particular flag set, which is the Moogle Cup, it's a little bit simpler. Well, I guess I'll just go over the whole thing. Lots of things are randomized: chests, abilities, bosses, espers, enemies, and shops. All of these things are kind of tweaked based on settings that you can apply on the website. The main thing that our runners are going to be going after are checks. That is usually little story events connected to individual characters. Terra goes after the Welk Cave, Cyan goes through the Doma Siege, things like that. For Moogle Cup specifically, they're going to be going after 6 characters and 9 espers to unlock the final battle. To get a little bit of extra give to skip through some of the final dungeon, if they find 9 characters, 12 espers, and complete 22 checks, they need to complete 2 of those things to get through a little bit. Save about 5 minutes on that ending there. They get 3 characters to start. Their stats are going to be pretty good, and scaling is a bit different than it is in some other randomizers. In this, it is based on characters and espers that the players have found, in addition to any of the endgame dragons that they happen to fight along the way. So here's some information about the Moogle Cup. 16 participants, 3 weeks of the round-robin sync raising, 3 weeks of Battle Royale. So 6 weeks total, and when you sign up for it as a player, you will get paired with one of our fantastic mentors that we have attached to it. I am one of them. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I don't know necessarily how fantastic I am, but I seem to be doing pretty good, and I know for a fact that a lot of other people have joined in on that mentor side that are incredible runners. So it's a really good way to get a bit of a head up.
Absolutely. Having been in the last Moogle Cup myself, I can tell you that it is absolutely worth joining. You learn the ropes, you get to be a part of a great community of people, you make great friendships along the way, and honestly, if you're looking to get into this particular randomizer, this is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, being able to ask direct questions is really handy. For example, you can find something like what we have in our starting group here. I believe Locke had Rage, which is a very picky starting ability to have. You can find a lot of good stuff in those rages, but unfortunately you kind of have to know when to use one, when not to use one, that sort of thing, which we can kind of get into if either of our runners decide to use that. In this particular opening, we see KwehstopherWarken heading towards Narsh, and Sigil also heading towards Narsh, but a little bit different. Locke, at the start, one of his checks is this weapon shop that you see here, which you can get into in the vanilla game when you get Locke. And down here, he's gonna have a first choice to make: unicorn or an Atma weapon.
Oh, that is definitely a choice. I think personally, I probably would have taken the Atma weapon, mostly because that offense later on is really nice, and since there are more espers than there are characters, generally it is a lot easier to make sure that you have that offense for in-game.
That is true. Also went after that Cursed Shield, which 2 battles for the Cursed Shield. Okay, that is excellent. There's basically no reason to not try to use that. So in the vanilla game, the Cursed Shield was something you collect there, and it takes 255 battles to turn into a Paladin Shield, which is one of the best defensive items in the game. We have reduced that number since you're usually not going to be fighting 255 battles in one of these randomizers. 2 is nuts. Like, that is very low. Paladin Shield, extremely powerful item that also teaches the Ultima spell.
I was about to say, I don't think I've ever had it that low, and that is definitely nice, as we joke around and say, everything is weak to the blue bubble, so if he gets a good magic user, and which, I mean, Strago is a very good magic user, if you find somebody like Realm would be even better, then that would be just an amazing thing. The only issue is it's kind of a longer spell, so it does take more time, so obviously physical offense is preferred, but when you come up against something like Magimaster, etc., that blue bubble is invaluable.
Absolutely, it's a key for basically any lock. It might not be the most efficient thing to do in any given situation, but it will pretty much always work. Another fantastic item that KwehstopherWarken found in the Returner's hideout here is the Illumina. Best weapon in the game, has pretty decent defensive stats on top of being a strong weapon, and Locke is guaranteed to be able to use it. However, in the rage list that we saw, I want to say it was Sigil ran through that rage list real quick. One of those options was Prussian, which that is a load-bearing rage. That is one you definitely want to see if you have a rage user, because it has a chance. The way the rage works is, I believe it's 50-50. It'll either be a regular attack or some sort of special attack. And Prussian has Landslide, which is a non-elemental magic attack that has roughly the same attack power as the Flare spell, with, I want to say, at least 1/5 of the casting time. So an excellent early game piece of offense there.
Absolutely. That's one of those things. If I see a rage user, I get pretty excited, because I actually remember a lot of the rages. And some of those, again, like you said, are fantastic. And that Landslide is chef's kiss. If you have, especially since Warken's found in Illumina, that will really help with him in terms of his offense. But seeing as Sigil has not gone that way yet, Prussian may be something we see pretty often, at least until he gets off the ground.
Absolutely. And I believe there was also an experience egg for sale in the relic shop in South Figaro there. That's going to be a fantastic get if our runners can manage it. It looks like KwehstopherWarken did in fact purchase one. It is arguably the best item in the game in terms of, giving you power over time. Levels are king in Final Fantasy VI. There's a lot of different algorithms behind the scenes, and levels tend to be roughly equivalent to multipliers in other Final Fantasy games. So you want to have as many of those as you possibly can get. Now we got Sigil heading through the Phoenix Cave, which is pretty interesting. Tends to be a check that a lot of people kind of fade. It's a bit of a long walk unless you have a good way of fighting the dragon. It can be considered sort of a quote-unquote waste of time. But getting it out of the way early can be really effective, especially if it is something that you need to get to progress. But in this case, it looks like Sigil is getting an ice shield, so it was not, in fact, needed to progress.
I'm sure he's not quite as thrilled about that, especially doing that run, but Sigil is pretty much known for doing the Phoenix Cave pretty early. Sometimes it has given him an edge, especially, like you said, if it winds up being gated. There is usually some decent stuff, but normally I would only go in there if, for instance, like you said, trying to take that dragon at the same time, kind of get a twofer, because that's 2 checks towards that 22 that you're looking for to get skip, and that is absolutely helpful whenever you're trying to save that time there at the end.
Definitely. I have gotten very spoiled after having a handful of pretty slow seeds that ended up having to take a bunch of checks. Not having to do that walk up the first half of Kefka's Tower is really, really handy. We have enhancers for sale in the weapon shop. Unfortunately, the only character completely incapable of doing magic damage outside of Storm is the only one that can equip it, so probably not going to be buying too many of those.
No, that is quite a shame. That extra little bit of boost for that magic power would have been very nice. But I'm seeing super balls. Alrighty, so in Moogle Cup, we have super balls that are fairly useful, and those are fantastic early on. Normally, in some of our harder flag sets, you're not going to see those in shops. You might be lucky to find one, somewhere else, but it is an item that you use, and it does pretty decent damage depending on if you get lucky. So not quite so much in the luck of dice, but it is a fantastic start. That is an easy way to take down a dragon or Magimaster or something that is a little unfriendly in the beginning. So it'll give Sigil a good edge to have that.
Yeah, I believe it does 256 damage times a random number between, I want to say 1 and... It's not 16, it's more than that. Maybe it's 1 and like 32 or something like that. But non-elemental, it completely ignores defense. It can be the thing that solves your early game, right? Like normally, we're seeing our runners floating around, picking up a bunch of items, checking a bunch of shops, trying to get enough power behind them so that they can just start the steamroller and keep it moving for as long as they possibly can. And Super Balls can really jumpstart that process.
Oh, absolutely. Super Balls can take a dragon at level 3 pretty solidly as long as they don't fizzle out and have a really low roll. That, for me, was one of my big things whenever I did Moogle Cup last time, is if I wanted to try to get those levels early on to boost me up and get kind of ahead of scaling so that my characters are going to be able to take on anything, I would slam that against a dragon and call it a day.
Oof. KwehstopherWarken running into the Colosseum and finding Illuminas for Magicite in that list. So the Colosseum is another thing that gets heavily randomized in this. Not only do you change the rewards that you get for any given item, but you get a random amount of information as well. It's a certain number. I missed it on the infographic that we had earlier, but I want to say it's roughly 100. It's usually a range that will let you know what you're going to get access to for your troubles. And in this case, KwehstopherWarken is trading all of those Magicite items, which just summon a random Esper. For some reason, it usually seems to summon Crusader, the one that also hurts your party for a ton. Going to trade all of those in for Illuminas, which, yes, that is the play. Get as many of those big swords as you possibly can.
Absolutely, and with him having that experience eggs boost those levels boost your strength, and that is great for your offense whenever you're swinging a big stick like that. So that will definitely give him an edge as he's going further in the seed.
Okay, so we got a couple corrections from the chat. I really appreciate that. So the Super Balls are 1 to 4 rolls of 256 to 124 damage. That makes a lot more sense, actually, because it usually won't do too much more than 4,000 or 5,000. I've seen it do about 5,000 before. I'm not sure if maybe I was imagining it or what, but I could have sworn that was the case. And our fantastic restreamer Drinks Glue, also there in the chat too, let me know that all items are visible in the Moogle Cup and the Colosseum, which is good. Like that is the Colosseum is something that I think a lot of runners just don't really worry about because it's a very easy way to waste some time, unfortunately. But in Moogle Cup specifically, it can really help you out if you're not quite running into the offense that you want.
Alrighty, and looking at some of those Espers, I noticed that there was a magic power +1 on one of those, and if we can get that shield uncursed and get some magic power boosted, I feel like that ultimate might do some great damage later on. Oh, and that fight is not particularly friendly this early on. I can see why Sigil is doing his best to take it out, and that waist shake is a big part of the reason why.
Yep. Yeah, anything that can use muddle is extremely dangerous. Your characters are substantially more powerful than the enemies in general, and when somebody gets muddled, that has already had a command set, that can be extremely dangerous, especially if it's something like Ultima, for example, that ignores defense. Now all of a sudden that's targeted at your party, and your characters are almost guaranteed to have more magic power than the enemy.
Looks like Warken is finding some pretty friendly fights there to boost his experience, starting off, and this is pretty nice. I think that's, again, gonna help him out. Hopefully Sigil will be able to find something to kind of boost him along soon.
I believe Sigil has found a couple more ice shields, which can, similar to Super Balls, they can help you out. Shields, normally they teach you a level 2 spell related to their element, and they have a bunch of elemental resistances, and are just pretty good shields in general on top of that. But if you use them as an item in a battle, it will use a maximized random variance version of the level 3 spell attached to it. So cracking one of those ice shields will do an ice 3 spell that ignores magic defense, it ignores reflect, and the random aspect to it will be as high as it possibly can be. Ooh, Sigil finds experience eggs as well. Going to go ahead and try to sell the farm here to pick up one of those.
Absolutely. That's going to do number for him. I know that Sigil is a huge fan of the experience egg. And realistically, that's not really on the highest side I've seen for prices, so that certainly doesn't hurt his feelings.
No, that's true. Those pretty affordable experience eggs.
Alrighty, so we see the Red Wolf and Marshall fight. The Marshall fight is actually not too bad, depending on who he winds up being paired with. When it comes to the Red Wolves, that's pretty easy. A little known fact that some people may not know is that if you do wind up with something kind of ugly, if he's paired up with something, say, the ogres that can zombify your characters, etc., you can kill the Marshal and run. You may not get experience for it, but sometimes that will save you in a run from a wipe if you need it. So that's one of those interesting fights that if you didn't know that, that's a way to get out of it if it gets hairy.
I did not know that. That's very interesting. Which, yeah, that's a quick question from the chat about how you go signing up for the Moogle Cup. We do have a Discord, the Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide Discord. There is some sign-ups there. We've got plenty of mentors, so please go on in there to sign up for it and get started on this and learn fantastic things like that. Like, I didn't even know, which is bad because I'm a mentor. So at the very least, now I can be a better one.
Hey, I mean, sometimes you learn things in crazy places. I can't even remember exactly where I picked that up, but I want to say I was watching someone else's race, believe it or not, and I saw them doing it. I'm like, oh, that'll be useful, and it has been. Especially like these with ninjas. Oh, that's miserable. Oh, we see a Katana Soul over there for KwehstopherWarken. Well, I can't speak. This boss, once you beat him, drops an offering which allows you to attack 4 times in a fight, which is absolutely fantastic when you have a good weapon, say an Atma weapon or a VK, which is what we like to see with it. Having that is going to really do a good number as well. But Katana Soul can be a little ugly sometimes. It's
vulnerable to confuse. So if you can muddle it, it has a instant death attack that sometimes it'll use on itself, which is always funny to see. But yes, free offering plus a big boatload of GP afterwards. Offerings are a very valuable item that can be a integral piece to an endgame build.
You can see that Sigil is now working his way through the South Figaro Cave, so that will be putting him pretty close in here. Hopefully things will pick up soon in terms of finding some of the things that he needs.
Yeah, we have both of our runners not super excited about going after some of Strago's checks, which is fair. His checks they're not quite as bad as a lot of people make them out to be, but they are definitely slower than doing any of Locke's checks, or even for that matter, doing the Umaro combo, which I believe KwehstopherWarken is heading up to do now. Going to go take out the Tritok, maybe fight a dragon along the way, and jump into Umaro's cave after that. And on Sigil's side, we did see another fantastic rage that I missed when he was looking through that list. I think, God, is it Retainer? I think it's Retainer that has the shock command, which is extremely valuable.
That is correct. That is a really good one for early game, just about like Prussian. If you are looking at a big group, Retainer might actually be easier, since that is going to hit all of the characters that are on or all the monsters that are on the screen, compared to, say, Prussian, which is Landslide, which is a single target spell. So that's another fantastic rage to begin with.
Exactly. And KwehstopherWarken showing off a bit of some of the lesser-known stuff in this game. There are a handful of bosses that are vulnerable to status ailments that can really help get along there. For example, the Gold Dragon, which is historically a very nasty one to run into. You can berserk him to make sure that all he's going to do is just smack you for a little bit. We're gonna get into that in a big way during the final boss sequence, but along the way, they'll have a couple. Berserk especially is very handy to have, and they gets an Atma weapon for it. Very nice.
I'd say that was definitely a great prize to be taking, especially again since he's got that experience egg, because our Atma weapon gets a lot stronger with higher levels. Generally, you don't really get it off the ground until I think it's like level 32. 20,
yeah. 32 is when you're not going to be running into any penalties for it. The way that algorithm works is 32 is when you're really going to start seeing some huge bumps in your damage. But it can be okay before then as well. But really, you're not going to want to be swinging it around until maybe like high 20s or so.
Alrighty, and it looks like we are brute forcing our way through the second half of Senior Behemoth. For those that do not know, in Moogle Cup, we do have some undead bosses that we can do insta-death on, and this happens to be one in the second half. He could have used something akin to Phoenix Down or Revivify, and it would have been an instant death for the second half of that fight, which can save you some time, especially when you're further in, and he's got a lot more health than he did right now. So... but he brute forced his way through that, and he is rewarded with Zone Seek. So, hey, another Magicite to go, and I'm sure he's about to jump in that hole and go do that Yeti Shack.
Whoa! Okay, that's pretty good, Esper. It's times 20 on that Ultima spell.
Well, so much for needing that shield. I mean, either those two fights for the shield, or an Esper that'll be exceedingly quick. So we might get to see some blue bubbles soon.
Oh, definitely. At times 20, I'll teach that to everybody just for fun. Just got to show off on Kefka a little bit. So, alright, let's see if... Yes, Sigil also has a bunch of Magicite items. Let's see if Sigil also decides to just load up on Illuminas the way that KwehstopherWarken did. Hey, there's our first character. We got Setzer at the Umaro spot. This is a good one to find pretty much at any point during the seed, although Doom is this one's a bit scary. Thankfully, the Illumina is a good problem solver for this guy. He doesn't like Pearl that much, and his second phase, which we might see here pretty shortly, gives him the... what's it called? Image, that's what it's called. The image status, which completely ignores physical attacks. However, the Illumina does not care and will just hit no matter what.
Not to mention that the Illumina also gives you some benefits in terms of being able to dodge spells. So, for instance, if he's using Ice 2 or something on your team, there's a possibility that our Illumina user may not actually get hit by it. So that is also a bonus for that Illumina.
Yes, it is a very good defensive item. It doesn't give you any actual defense stat, but it has, I want to say, 40 of both types of evasion on it. And And that's another thing in Worlds Collide that I neglected to mention in the beginning is a bunch of the more popular bugs have been fixed. You can use Sketch and not have to worry about your game throwing up and having to call in sick to work the next day. The evasion bug has been fixed, so that works the way it's supposed to. Darkness also works the way it's supposed to, so you're going to have to watch out for if any of your characters have sunglasses on.
Well, unfortunately, it looks like Doom was not too rude to Mr. Warken, and so he's going to be rewarded with Spencer. And well, I guess we'll see where this goes. Setzer. Why am I saying Spencer? Goodness gracious. So
that's his first. Setzer's his last name, and Spencer's his first. He goes by his last name.
That's it. Honestly, I believe it's a friend of mine from years ago that he took a play off of that, and so he called himself Spencer Gabbiani, which is, so it was this huge joke for a while, and I think that's probably what's coming to mind. So, but yes, Setzer, let's see kind of what we're going to do with that. He's got a free check in Collision, which is going to be really helpful to try to move things along. I'm wondering if that's where Warken is going to go now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Warken's got plenty of power. I think he can get away with taking a free check here that doesn't have any kind of experience gain to it. And the other part of it that I really like is this right here, Search the Skies. I tend to save it for later on in the seed if I'm needing an Esper, since this is not going to provide a character, guaranteed. But also just grabbing it right away can be really handy, especially if it's a strong Esper that has a good stat boost on it. And in addition to that, right after Kohlingen, right next door is Daryl's Tomb, which is Setzer's other check. You can get a full clear on a character's worth of checks really quickly with Setzer.
All right, and we can see that Sigil is pretty excited to find that Atma weapon. He's already putting that on the Yeti. That's going to be pretty nice here soon.
I love the Yeti Atma weapon is one of the best characters in the game. He can't control him, but he's got stupid amounts of vigor. He comes with a snow muffler, so he's not going to be taking that much physical damage, and if you can get lucky and put a really nice shield on him, like a Force shield or an Aegis shield, the Yeti becomes functionally invincible, and you can just swing that lightsaber all you want. Valiant Knife in Kohlingen. Let's go. This is a physical offense seed. I love it.
Yeah, especially since he got that offering earlier, that is going to be fantastic for late game. Even now, realistically, of course, for those that may not know, the VK does its damage in a differential between your maximum health and how much you have. So if somebody's been beat up a bit, that makes them a lot more powerful. So generally, that's probably one of the better offenses if you're worried about it. So for instance, you mentioned with having the snow muffler on the Yeti and him not taking much damage, that's great for an Atma weapon. But for everybody else who takes plenty of damage, that VK is going to really put out some decent damage. And we also saw that the Esper that came from the Search the Skies was Golem, so that is what we call some of our calmness protection. And we'll be talking more about that once we get into Tier 3 of Kefka at the end.
Absolutely. Valiant Knives are easily my favorite weapon in the game. Ignores defense, and that damage benefit you get from having low HP is completely divorced from all of anything in the game that might reduce that damage. So that is just a flat buff to how much damage you're going to do. That Zone Seek also had an HP plus 50 on it, so that's just going to be planted right there on lock for probably the rest of the game.
Absolutely. With him being a natural Valiant Knife user, Locke is usually my preferred if I wind up with a Valiant Knife. So having that HP plus, again, like I was speaking before about that health differential being part of what does your damage, having that boosting his HP up higher and higher means that he's going to be pretty much boosting that potential to do some massive damage later on.
Absolutely. It has the double effect where you can have him at low HP and get, a plus 4,000 or whatever to it. But it also has the added benefit of you can have him at, say, half HP, and he's still going to be doing a bunch of extra damage with it, and not completely, but heavily negates the possibility of him getting just accidentally one-shotted out of nowhere.
And I think I just saw that there is a Go-Go that sleeps here in the tomb, so that looks like that's going to be another character for Warken. Go-Go only has the one check, but that is also a free check. It takes a little bit longer as well. So we'll have to see whether or not he decides to meander over to that little island and take that on.
And yeah, let's see. It looks like probably not. The way that check works is you have to get eaten by that Zone Eater, and it's a lot easier to do that if you just have the one character in your party, which is perfect time to do that is when you find Go-Go. But it looks like KwehstopherWarken is going to head to one of Strago's checks instead. We have a quick question from the chat. What's the best way to work with a mentor to learn this game? Different mentors kind of work in different ways. It's usually a good idea to try to pair ones up that have a similar sort of attitude. We do have a little questionnaire that you fill out about what you think the best ways that you learn things are to try to match you up with somebody that can match with that. But in my experience, a good thing to try to do initially is to try to set up a non-competitive race that the mentor can watch you for. That way you can pause, ask some questions, go over some strategies, things like that, where it's a little bit easier to just sort of point directly at the thing you're doing right now and saying, like, okay, here's when you run into this situation, here's the things that you have to think about during that situation.
Absolutely. And again, as we mentioned before, we have some of the best mentors, so more or less you're going to be able to learn some pretty valuable information regardless of who you're paired with. We also have campfires from time to time, which is kind of a community thing, so you can also wind up learning a few things, little tidbits from whoever's running that. I know that in the last Moogle Cup, Sigil, Dwaya, Cerise, KwehstopherWarken even did a few of the campfires, and that's kind of a good community booster, but also will help you pick up some extra information, and you can pretty much learn from anyone. Don't settle yourself for just learning from one mentor when you can learn from as many of them as will give you the information. So those campfires are definitely another boost to the learning experience.
Absolutely. So we just saw KwehstopherWarken do the most fantastic thing that everybody loves seeing. Old man picked up a train, dropped it on its head, and we're going to go ahead and reward him in the Moogle Cup seeds with a high-tier relic for doing that. So it doesn't tell you what the relic is. Going to have to look through your item list to find out what it is. But that can be a handy little buff. Looks like it was a Genji glove in this case.
Oh, and with all those big sticks that he's been pulling out, that might actually be a way to go. And it looks like that's what he's doing now. All right.
So, yep, congratulations to KwehstopherWarken for winning just kind of by default. We'll see if Sigil heads on over into Ebbett's Rock to do the same.
Well, given the number of checks that we have available here, I have a feeling that that's probably going to happen unless he manages to find another character sometime soon. So far, it seems that our checks are fairly limited. We don't have any of the big players that have many checks available. So right now, there's not as much room for deviation. Now, if they find someone like, say, Tara, who has quite a few checks, then that may change.
Yeah, in general, this has been a pretty narrow seed. Like you said, a lot of these characters don't have huge amounts of checks, and a couple of them, Setzer and Locke specifically, have checks that don't, give you another character. So there can be espers in there that will still help with your progression, but you're not finding characters to give you access to more checks. We'll see if Sigil takes the Go-Go check after this. Gonna fight this Gigantos. This is a fantastic one to find. Vulnerable to instant death, and I believe the single largest bit of experience that you can get from a regular enemy.
Absolutely.
Levels in a box.
Yeah, I don't think that hurts anybody's feelings whenever they can find that and beat it, because that's going to be a boost to those levels for sure. And of course, you see he's putting on that Atmo weapon. So now that's a go, since Setzer is currently at a level 33.
Yes, excellent. Decided to put the Valiant Knife on the Yeti. That's another fantastic combo. You got to keep him at low HP, which can be a little bit tougher when you can't control a character. He might, accidentally take a counterattack from something somewhere, but any of those weapons that you can just kind of set it and forget it really works well with Umaro. The only exception to that would be the Ragnarok and the Illumina that both have the MP crit property, where it takes a little bit of your MP to do an automatic critical hit. That will not, unfortunately, work on Umaro, since he's... I believe it's because it's related to collecting the magic points that you get from after a battle, and Umaro, unfortunately, does not get any of those.
Correct. He is one of 2 characters that do not get to benefit from the magic points. Go-Go is the other one. So, honestly, I think a VK on the Yeti is not actually a bad plan, especially as you mentioned before. He doesn't take a whole lot of damage, so it's easier to keep his health low without it being too dangerous of him dying from most things and compared to everyone else. So that's actually a pretty smooth play. Oh,
definitely. I would probably prefer the Atma weapon over that on him, but that's more just a flavor thing, right? Like they both work exceptionally well on that character.
I think somebody in the chat mentioned it before that with the Yeti, you don't really have to worry much. You know, you may not be able to control him, but if you put him on there, everything dies, and that's just as good.
Yep. So, all right, we have KwehstopherWarken heading through another one of Strago's checks here, going through the Burning House. This one is a bit rough. There's a lot of random encounters in here with those little fireball guys. I guess not random, fixed encounters. But unfortunately, kind of tough to avoid them. There's some tricks you can do to skip past these things, or the soldiers in the Kefka sequence, for example. It can be nice if they're really good random encounters that you want to fight, but in this case, the still going and the key walks, they're not a whole lot of experience that you're getting. And
we are seeing Doom Gaze. Are we going to pass our math check? Oh, it looks like we didn't pass it quite as well. It took out 2 of our players there, but fortunately, we can get them up, and hopefully this will not be too bad. That is the unfortunate part with Doom Gaze, since he starts with that level 5 Doom. If any of your characters are in that 5 range, you know, whether the multiplicatives of 5, then level 5 Doom will take them down, just as we saw there with the poor Yeti and Locke.
We're seeing Sigil heading through the Zone Eater check here. Found yet another Illumina in a chest there in the collapsing ceiling room. Can't get enough of those.
Seems like this seed is definitely giving you directions. It says, please, Illuminos for all.
Yeah, just subtly letting you know, like, hey, maybe use the fight command in this one.
Ooh, and we have found Realm. That is a fantastic find, especially with having Ultima. It looks like Sigil is leaving her behind, which is a little sad. But then again, at this point in the game, you're kind of limited on whether you want to take him or not, especially if you've been building everyone else up. But that Ultima with Realm would have been beautiful. Of course, we have so much offense at this point. Again, that's going to be a time sink compared to just swinging some swords.
Yeah, I understand that. Like, in almost any other case, you would take Realm and you would teach your Ultima, and then congratulations, you have an endgame build, within 2 battles, if that. But in this case, we've had a bunch of experience eggs, so they've been kind of getting shuffled around to all the characters. I think we found, there's about 45 Illuminas floating around in this seat at this point. This is definitely a physical seat. I think this is one of the rare occasions where you can leave Realm on the bench, especially in terms usually she's not left over Umaro, but in a case like this, I can definitely see that. Question from the chat: is this character gated checks? Yes, it is. So it's related to vaguely the different events that happen to these characters in the main game. So, for example, we're seeing Sigil just picked up Realm, not putting Realm in their party, but is going to go through Ozer's Mansion, which is where you find Realm in the World of Ruin in the original game. Not her fastest check, but I think this is still a decent play. Just go ahead and get this out of the way. We've seen Sigil doing a lot of the slightly longer checks, a bit a bit earlier. Doing fantastic routing through them as well. Like, hasn't bonked into any corners really. Had a much nicer time with these bridge trolls than it looks like Warken is, but sneaks right past him. Fantastic. If those guys in green touch you while you're going along the bridge, they knock you down a floor. You get a couple chests, but you have to start that whole process over again. And it's not the worst thing that can happen to you in the seed, but it feels like the worst thing that can happen to you in a seed.
Oh, absolutely. There. Oh no, we got a ceiling, but fortunately it looks like he saved right before, hopefully. I believe that's why you hit the save point. I absolutely scared the tar out of my poor mentor with that, because I generally would not save. Of course, fortunately, I played this a lot growing up, so I know, for instance, that little hole there that we see to the left, I know exactly where to stand to be in that hole and not get smashed by the ceiling. But I'm pretty sure I gave her a heart attack a few times going through that area. That is very unfortunate, but the good thing is he saved right there, so he's not really losing a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I reflexively gasped at that because I put my hand over my mouth and everything. There are chests in that section if you want to if you want to make it much easier to not have to deal with getting squished by the ceiling. Just avoiding that first check, you're going to have plenty of time to head into the small gap in front of that second chest, so that you don't have to get squished. And as we saw on KwehstopherWarken's screen there, it didn't quite, like, Locke was on that spot, but the way that the game works, the second that the ceiling starts falling, that's when it decides whether or not you messed up and are going to get squashed. So the Locke sprite continued moving left a little bit, but unfortunately the game had already decided it was too late by that point.
So I don't know if you saw it, but on that golem there, I saw a quick with a learn speed of ×5, and that can really help for an in-game strategy when you're trying to put out that damage quick as a spell that basically gives you the ability of having a second turn. So your person casts and time stops completely for all of your battle timers, and they are able to basically take 2 actions, and that can really set you right when it comes to that final fight of getting things moved along without having to deal with any consequences. And of course, on Sigil's side there, we saw that he found Sabin, and that is another great find.
Yes, tons of checks on that character. Still 1 over the limit. You need 6 to get into the final dungeon, but hey, if you find yet another character, that's one of the 2 requirements for the check skip, or for the tower skip, excuse me. So used to calling it check skip. The tower skip, finding 8 characters, a couple extra espers, maybe a couple extra checks. So Sigil might be able to pull off avoiding a 5-minute walk. And yes, from the chat, a fantastic point. Quick plus the offering in VK. That is a fantastic way of dealing with the final boss. Most of the troubles with the final boss come from having to manage counterattacks and things like that. But if you use quick and the offering, you can easily get away with avoiding a lot of the nastier ones.
Well, and one of those things that we've had so far here in Worlds Collide is that generally with seeds, characters lead to characters, and of course he just found Sabin, and now Sigil is looking at getting Mog, so that will put him up to 8 characters after this, which puts him 1 away from having skipped just from characters. So that's going to be really interesting. It looks like he's going to be on the hunt for espers before long. And he found another Atma weapon, so talk about offense in this seed.
Yeah, no kidding. So the other handy thing with Sabin, we saw it in this case. You got to see Mog was holding up the collapsing house. You got to see that before you had to go in and really commit to the check. That is what we end up calling a peekable check. So it's something that gives you a little bit of information on what you're going to get before you have to fully commit to spending a bunch of time doing a whole dungeon. Sabin has a couple of those. This one is a good example. The Imperial Camp is another one where you have to do that first fight, but after that first fight, you're going to see whether or not you're going to get a character or an esper or item. And then again, with the Phantom Train, you get that same benefit. So that way, Sigil can look around and decide, well, okay, I don't really need to get a 9th character, so let's just go ahead and move along, do something else. And here's another example of it.
Yes, indeed. I was about to say, looking on Warken's side here, he's about to open up some checks for himself. So far, again, his has been exceedingly limited with characters he's had. They've had very few checks. But now he is about to get his save in, and so that is really going to boost him up on having places to go and options.
Yeah, we had a little bit of divergence early on, but it looks like our runners have kind of started molding together here. They're both doing similar things, just not necessarily in the same order. We did see an imp sprite wandering around for the Esper Mountain here, which is one of Realm's checks, so that way Sigil knows that it's not going to be a character in this case either. It is Kieran. It's really interesting. Like, I find myself talking way too much during these things, even though, this is roughly an hour to an hour and a half for one of these seeds, but there's just so much going on that it's kind of tough to keep track of it all.
Oh, absolutely. And with these two runners making great time and zooming through everything, that does make it hard to try to comment on all of it. And it looks like we are getting a Barren Falls play. This one of the benefits from this particular fight, if you've taken a lot of damage in a fight before, right before you jump over, it heals your entire party. So sometimes that is a really good way, instead of using items to be able to heal everybody up. It's good to know some of these checks that you can gain some benefits from, some health, like for instance with Dome of Siege, and once you beat it, it heals your whole party. So in this case, he just got a boost if anybody was hurt. They are not anymore. They are now at full, and that is going to set him up for continuing along and just steamrolling through his checks.
Didn't even need that quick. Took care of Rexel right fast. That's an endgame boss. He can be really tricky, but doesn't have as much HP as some of the other World of Ruin bosses do. So we're seeing this is a difference here. KwehstopherWarken just completely ignoring all of the chests in here to clear through this Collapsing House check a little bit faster than Sigil. Not going to get that extra Atma weapon in here, but I can safely say that I don't think KwehstopherWarken is going to be too terribly upset.
No, I'm pretty sure it's not really going to hurt his feelings with the vast number of Illuminas, the Atma weapons, and then that VK offering. I'm pretty sure that one in there can probably just stay. And we see we're about to get a character skip over there on Sigil's side as he finds Share. And that, again, gives him a few more free checks and some more options. One of the things that he could possibly do, which I probably could see him doing, is going to the Magitech facility, which is one of her checks. The first two are guaranteed to either be an item or an Esper, and you can skip the third one by warping out. So that would be a good way to kind of narrow down the field and make sure that we're not finding characters with the checks that we're making.
Absolutely. That is a very good, I think that would be a very good call to make after this. The first two are really quick. It is a multi-part check, so there is a third one that you can get if you go all the way to the end, but that involves a minecart ride and another couple of bosses, and don't necessarily need to do that if you don't have to. So grabbing those two Espers and just dipping out is a pretty good call, I think.
We are about to see what we have at Imperial Camp after this fight, so let's see what runs in. Fortunately, it looks like it could be an Esper, or it also could be an item, so let's hope that it is an Esper.
Ugh. Yeah, this is not the fight you want to see, though, unfortunately. The level magics don't give you any experience points whatsoever. They give you a bunch of magic points, which can be handy if you need to learn some spells, but in general, you just want to get away from those guys.
Yep, and he'll be running again because with the Imperial Camp, the first two fights that you have in this segment are generally the same thing. The third one will be different, so I guess we'll see what we have up next. Hopefully it's something that's a bit better than those.
Let's get a double Gigantos going right here. Okay, not quite.
And of course, it see that he's not going to need to use this, but if you were to run into this early on, these are also undead enemies, and again, using your curative items, for instance, the Revivify or the Phoenix Down, you would easily be able to take out most of this fight just by using items, and they would have insta-death. So that would be useful in something if you were to come across that early.
Yes, finding an undead enemy when you're trying to get some early game levels is fantastic. And hey, you got an Esper Carbuncle for that fight there. So if those two checks at the beginning of Magitech Facility are in fact Espers, Sigil could be looking at going into the tower here at probably in the next 5 minutes or so.
Well, let's hope that Magitech Facility is kind. I have a feeling that is where he's headed. Yep, he is right on point with us.
Absolutely. That is the call. So yeah, let's hope these pays out for him. KwehstopherWarken heads into a fight with Rexol. A little bit behind, I think, at this point. Sigil has managed to kind of squeeze ahead just slightly in terms of collecting progression, although I think KwehstopherWarken still has a little bit of an advantage on levels. So we'll see if that doesn't help out once we get to the boss rush at the end of the tower.
It looks like Rexol is not going quite as quickly for KwehstopherWarken. As you notice there, if you kill the little fellows in the front, they just respawn. So sometimes that can take a lot of time on your hands. Especially for instance, we talked about the blue bubble before. That would probably take out all of them. You'd have to wait for the fade in and fade out of those two little fellas, and that can eat up your time. But fortunately, that only happened once, and he has gone through, and he will be rewarded with his own Zilla share.
All right, going to be probably very happy to see that. We'll see if KwehstopherWarken decides to make the same plays that Sigil does. We got Dataluma here, a real early game boss that I'm struggling to think of a situation in which you'd be worried to run into Dataluma. I don't think there's really much of a problem with him, unless I guess sometimes if he's a high enough level he can cast like Grand Train or something weird, but oof,
okay, so we have an item first. I mean, the Genji Glove is not a bad situation, especially since he's got those Atmas.
It's true.
I mean, you put more people swinging more swords and things are going to go down a lot faster, so I guess we'll see if he decides that he's going to ramp that up. But it is kind of unfortunate in this case. Obviously, we were hoping to find two Espers going along here. Let's just hope that the second one pans out and he at least gets one. And we have come up with what my kid has coined as Satan's Poultry, and everyone else tends to call Spicy Chicken. Yeah. Poltergeist is one of our statues in the vanilla game. Not one you like to find. You can actually use stop on him, and that will slow him down. But otherwise, he can be a pretty nasty fight, especially the further you get in the game.
I forgot about Satan's Poultry. That's extremely good.
Yeah.
That's a very good one.
On Warken's side... So on Warken's side, we see that he is unlocking Bum Rush, which is amazing. That is one of the last things that you would want to leave behind with a Blitz user. And of course, since he's been keeping that in his team, that is a fantastic damage that will really give him a boost. Again, I don't know that I would have run here for that per se with all the swinging, but I mean, it's definitely not something to sleep on. It'll help him in the end.
Yeah, I think in a non-Moogle Cup seed, Ultima in the Moogle Cup seeds are just the standard MP cost, so it's I want to say around 80 for that. But in some of our other ladders and some of the other monthlies that we have going on, it is bumped up to a much higher MP cost. I want to say 254 is the standard. So in a situation like that, I can see wanting to get Bum Rush as sort of a just-in-case backup. But there's not a whole lot that it's going to accomplish for you that Ultima wouldn't necessarily. It does have the strange distinction, like a lot of Sabin's moves, of being a magic attack. I want to say Pummel and Suplex are the only blitzes that actually utilize Sabin's or the blitz user's vigor. So
Absolutely. Yes, here in the Moogle Cup, Ultima is actually halved, so it's only 127, and as you said, yes, it is 254 in the vanilla game. So generally, it is not something you're going to get a lot of use out of unless you find something like an economizer. Oh, and Warken has taken a wrong turn there in the basement, but fortunately that's not too hard to move out of. But unfortunately, we were only rewarded with a Thunder Shield, so we are still on that Esper hunt as we go through. See, Sigil is coming to Fanatic's Tower. And as we see here, the sprite that we have, if it is not a character, then it is a guaranteed Esper. So he is running up to do his Fanatic's Tower, and that will give him his last Esper by the time he is done.
So yeah, that is another aspect to some of these checks that you kind of just have to, you could study up on it, but a lot of it comes from practice and just sort of drilling it into your head. This is always going to be progression. There's a few checks that are guaranteed progression. A handful of them are in multi-part checks. There's a question in the chat about if leaving the third Magitech facility check is always viable. The one case which it wouldn't be is if you are at least one away from your character or Esper requirements, because the final check for that whole field is guaranteed to be some sort of progression. So Sigil is definitely going to be finding his 9th Esper at the top of this.
Yes, actually, one of the ones that I absolutely love to do early game, if I can find it, with Shadow, you're talking about ones with guaranteed progression. For those that don't know, the floating continent that we will not get to see today because we don't have Shadow actually has 2 guaranteed progression whenever you do that. Of course, it's also a 10-minute check, so that is a definite reward. If you wind up finding it early, later on, you may not want to make that kind of a long run just for those 2, depending on what you've got.
Yes, and the other unfortunate bit is it does take a while to get from Magitech 2 to Magitech 3, for example. I don't know how it would relate to comparing to the climb up the Fanatic's Tower here, but I think this is another very smart play from Sigil here.
Yes, absolutely. That's the unfortunate part is, again, with this case, he was able to see that he is going to wind up with an Esper at the end, whereas with the Magitech facility, running through that third part, it is a very long play, and it could have been a character at the end. So this kind of guarantees that he's going to wind up in a better situation with a little bit less time involved. At least at this point, he is guaranteed to get what he needs, whereas, for instance, with the Magitech facility, he didn't really know, and so using that time may not have been beneficial if he had found another character.
And that is Final Kefka unlocked for KwehstopherWarken. And I believe a skip as well, since they've got that extra character there. So Sigil just has to make their way down this tower again, and I believe they're also going to get the Kefka Tower unlock. Or Final Kefka unlock, excuse me, I need a...
Yes.
That is very specific. If you don't have all of the requirements, you can still go through the whole final dungeon, but the second you step on one of the switches at the very end, your character will get knocked back, and you'll hear that just beautiful MIDI laugh as you feel just the worst you've ever felt in your entire life, have to warp out and go find that last piece of progression.
Yes, that is definitely a bad feeling if you get all the way there and find out that you do not have what you need. And it looks like this is going to be a really tight race here in the end because, again, like you said, Sigil is on his way to get his unlock for the final boss, and then I'm sure that he's going to be making his way into the tower too, so we're going to really be seeing it fairly close here at the end.
And that does tend to happen. I don't know if this is just confirmation bias on my part, but a lot of Worlds Collide seeds, even if it feels like one player is way ahead of the other, things tend to kind of somewhat squish together a bit at the end. Usually it's because somebody who may have gotten a couple of dead checks along the way, they've got a few more levels, so the bosses in this Final Kefka boss rush here, which... As you can see, you have to split up your fantastic party into 3 separate pieces. That can be a bit of a trip up for some players. If you have a few more levels, that might go a little bit smoother for you, so you don't necessarily have to worry as much about it. But running into Ultros 1, you don't really got to worry about that in any situation.
Yeah, that little bunny, you see him quite a bit, but he's never really much of a threat. So fortunately, that makes that an easy way to make it through a statue. And as you saw there, apparently Sigil had seen an offering in a store, and he obviously did not find the Katana Soul earlier in the game, so he just picked up his offering to up his offense here in the end. It's always nice to be able to see those in a store. They're exceedingly expensive, but of course at this point in the game, he's got plenty to sell, and doesn't really need to worry about trying to buy anything else. So hopefully that will help him speed up his end game as well.
Yeah, had enough money, but also had a handful of legendary swords in his back pocket to just be like, hey, yeah, you want an Excalibur? I don't need it. It's fine. Well, give me that egg. How's that egg doing back there? I want that.
Oh, and here we go with another easy boss. These are some pretty friendly endings here. First we have Ultros, now we have Narapa. Now, you're not going to want to use a single target spell on this particular enemy, as she has Reflect. But, of course, you see here, she opens with Condemn, which puts those little timers over your head. The timers go down, and your people die. But, of course, I don't think we're going to have to worry about that at all, as we are swinging that weapon there. So, yeah, give him another turn, and I think she's going to go down.
Yeah, not a lot of HP on this one, but that Reflect can be pretty dicey if all you have is single target spells to use. And that's that. So we'll see what this third one is. This could still... oh wait, no, there's two bosses left.
That is correct, because that was normally our vanilla Guardian spot. So we are about to see our next statue, which actually this one here is where Poltergeist would normally be. Let's see what we've got. Oh, the tentacle fight. This is not horrible, but it's certainly not friendly seeing that here at endgame. It is much friendlier to find earlier on.
Yeah, this is a very interesting one. Like you said, not a tough fight, but depending on what your offense is, this can take a little while. Like Locke, for example, he's got the Offering and the Valiant Knife, which is a bunch of damage, but you can't really target where it's going, so it's going to take a little while to take care of each of these individual nasty little noodles.
Oh, and see, unfortunately, it looks like they want to seize Go-Go, which is certainly going to help him out, but as you can see, that holds on to our character and makes them completely useless until those let go, which they are not going to let go until death, if you will. But fortunately, we have one tentacle left, and it's already full, so as it is eating health, it's about to lose its life, and we're going to see him move along.
So here we got into a bit of an example of what I'm talking about. Sigil, with a few more levels than KwehstopherWarken, has been just stomping all of these bosses. Has a much larger team for this as well. A Magitech Celeste. We didn't get to see that, but that would have been pretty fun. That's an ability that gets a lot better if you finish the Magitech Research Facility. That's I suppose another reason that I completely forgot that would be good to finish that off. Gives you access to Tech Missile. Don't really need it in this particular flag set, but finding a Magitech Celeste is a fantastic find.
Well, and as you noticed, we had talked about it earlier with the quick strats. Of course, he didn't need it. That ultimate took him down immediately. But he was trying to use the quick stats just in case. That would have been really easy. It would have kept the enemies from moving at all if that had become an issue.
Ooh, KwehstopherWarken forgot to put a Moogle Charm on, so gonna have to deal with these Uridans. They're worth a lot of experience points. I guess looks like gonna go ahead and take that. Meanwhile, Sigil is stepping on this second switch here, and we get to see what this final statue is. So there is one particularly nasty boss that we have not seen yet. And it looks like we're not seeing it today. I mean, I think the Berserk has been thrown around a lot, so if we did run into Magimaster, that wouldn't be too terrible. But it is a very fantastic, you love seeing that at the very end. Everything's going great. You run into Ultros 1 and frickin', Narapa, whatever, who cares? And then your right-hand side statue turns out to be one of the nastiest bosses in the game. Did not happen this time, thankfully, and that is it for the big purple robot.
I think the other one that could have been here, which would have been amusing, would have been Goddess, but we didn't get to see her this time around either, so... Fortunately, this looks like a really easy tower, all things considered.
Yeah, actually, considering there are offerings floating around, so I think that would have required, maybe popping out of the fight and rearranging your equipment, but Goddess also absorbs Holy, so any procs off of the Illuminas would have been a nasty problem if they had run into Goddess, but not gonna have to worry about that. KwehstopherWarken stepping on all 3 switches at 10121. That's a fun number.
Yeah, it is, and of course here at Worlds Collide we like to try to guess how long our first competitor stepping on the switches is going to take in their final Kefka fight. What kind of time do you think he's going to get out of this, Turdsman, with all those nice swingy weapons?
I think I'm gonna say about 8 minutes 20 seconds. I think that both of our runners have a lot of really good power here, but I guess they do. No, they've got instant death. So yeah, I'm gonna say maybe about 8 minutes 20 seconds.
I want to give him a little bit better out of that. I think I'm gonna go for probably about a solid like maybe 750, and the reason that honestly with the offense that they have in terms of melee, the only reason that I would say that is because I haven't seen a mute anywhere. Otherwise, it might have been a little bit faster.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So let's see if we can't talk through all of this. You see the Doom spell getting cast on the long arm there. There are 3 targets for this first bit. The face and the 2 hands. The long arm is susceptible to instant death and break. The face is weak against fire, and if killed last, will counter with a quake, which can be pretty nasty. And the balled up fist there in the back, that will just do a really nasty physical counter if you hit it. And if it's killed last, then it doesn't necessarily have a death counter, but it might smack you at the end anyway.
Yes, now, we're not going to see it today with all of these nice big sticks, but the head is actually weak to fire, which can be invaluable. And as you can see here, the unfortunate part is if head is the last one to die, we wind up with a counter of quake. So unfortunately, we have now lost Locke. I'm wondering if Warken is going to continue trying to roll through with what he has. I mean, he still has a decent offense, but that is an unfortunate part. Each one has its own kind of death counter, and unfortunately, if you kill the head last, which happened here, as you see, again, like I said, Quake will take down your party pretty hard. Fortunately, he's moving into tier 2, and I guess we'll see where he goes from here.
Hey, Umaro's here, and he's geared up. We saw earlier that he's still got some accessories and equipment on him, so that shouldn't be too terrible. This middle one, you can cast Doom on that weird centerpiece there. That's supposed to be tools, I think is what it's called. The tiger face down there at the bottom is weak against ice and has a very nasty attack, Doom Tusk, which will zombify a character once he gets down to roughly about a third of his HP. You got the blue dude in front, that's hit. Hit will hit you. That's about it. That's a good rhyme. Excuse me. And in the back, that is magic, which is probably the most time-consuming piece of this second tier, but is susceptible to mute. So if you have mute or siren, you can just go ahead and turn that guy off and not have to worry about it.
Absolutely, and as you can see, with our tiger face down there, he has some pretty nasty attacks, all things considered. You'll see Flare Star. He can also freeze your party with Northern Cross. So we definitely want to kind of get that one out of the way as quickly as possible. As you can see, they took care of tools early on. So then generally Tiger would be next. The one scary part that we could possibly see here with uncontrolled damage is if he winds up killing Magic and Hit at the same time. Magic, which is the one that is all the way on the left, has his death counters are Dispel and Quarter, and unfortunately Quarter will take your characters down to a quarter of their health, and then if Hit winds up dying at the same time, then you wind up with his counter, which is 10 hits, and that is some pretty massive damage, and if you've already lost that HP, that is a that is a game over sometimes.
Yeah, here we go. So yeah, hit doesn't do a whole lot of damage on an individual punch, but 10 hits, obviously, will hit 10 times, as it says. Thankfully, we've got a lot of Illuminas, so we're just... Ooh, uh-oh. I spoke too soon. That was my fault, I'll take that.
You doomed it there, but fortunately, magic is still up, so we didn't have to worry about that. He's got time to be able to recover, and hopefully that will be what we see here as he continues along.
So, alright, Setzer's back up. Here comes S-Cross, though, which is a fire attack for some reason, despite what it looks like. Not too accurate, though, apparently, and blocked the Doom Tusk. Fantastic.
Oh, and see, again, that was one of those benefits of the Illumina that Setzer is currently wearing, is that he managed to dodge that Southern Cross. So that, again, I mentioned it earlier that was a possibility, and here we actually got to see it. So those Illuminas really hold it out for him there.
So we see how much of a benefit you can get from having a few extra levels in your opponent's sigil, just barely squeaking ahead of KwehstopherWarken here, despite jumping on the switches a little bit later.
Absolutely, but here we are getting into Tier 3, and in Tier 3 we have two targets. We have Girl, who is in the back, and Sleep, who is in the front. Girl can heal. She is one who absorbs all elements, so you definitely don't want to hear with anything elemental. Anything non-elemental is what you're going to go with. And of course, with VKs and Atma weapons, that's not going to be much of a problem taking her down. Sleep in the front, once he gets down to below 10,000, he has a very nasty ability of spamming Meteo, and that is something that you're going to not want to see. He has some pretty nasty spells up his sleeve otherwise. It's just an ugly fight.
Yeah, this is the scariest one, in my opinion. Meteo has kind of low accuracy for a spell, but it completely ignores defense, so it will do roughly, I want to say it's somewhere between like 1,400 to 1,600 damage. Can be really scary, but Sigil just squeezes right through it with a quick and an offering Genji Glove Setzer, flying right on up into Tier 4 here. We didn't even get a chance to talk about Calmness.
I was about to say, you can see Golems coming up. Yeah, Warken is making sure that he is preparing for that. Again, with what I was mentioning previously, we generally talk about Calmness protection, and what Calmness is a counter that Sleep does when he dies. He can do either 1 or 2, which is an insta-death on your characters. So it is definitely useful to have that, so you don't wind up losing them right before you go hit that 4th tier.
All right, and Tier 4, Final Kefka, is a lot simpler than a lot of the fights before it. He's basically just a really good caster. Got lots of spells, has a really nasty physical attack in the form of Havoc Wing. Probably not going to be seeing much of that on Sigil's side because doing tons of damage here. I think that might be Crack.
There's a Crack Pow, yeah.
GG's to Sigil. Best defense is a good offense in this seed.
Absolutely. He went through it so fast we really couldn't talk about a whole lot of what he did.
Yep, completely obfuscated almost all of Kefka's nasty attacks. Does a lot of counters, really likely to counterattack you, but once you do a certain amount of damage, it will put him into the next phase of his script, which will start charging a Goner, which is a very nasty non-elemental attack, and during that time, he will not counterattack you. So if you're having a little bit of trouble, like KwehstopherWarken, for example, might want to, get a bunch of damage out at the first so that you can possibly get away with avoiding the Fallen 1 attack, which brings everybody down to 1 HP, and then maybe waiting until the Goner charge starts happening, although KwehstopherWarken has been just a steamroller going through this as fast as possible, so probably going to just swing on him as hard as you can. And we are joined by Sigil here in the booth. GG's, Sigil.
Thank you.
Yeah, you definitely made a good run. You made up some crazy time there, hitting into the tower. KwehstopherWarken actually managed to get into the tower a little bit faster, but your offense was just taking you through, and you zoomed right past him. So, GG's indeed.
Yes. I was sad when Celeste didn't pan out.
Oh yeah,
we were talking about that. Actually, we were talking about your choices of going into the Magitech facility, hoping for those espers in those first 2 checks, and unfortunately, one of those was dead.
Yeah, and then the Figaro basement was dead also.
yeah, a lot of those elemental shields floating around.
Not that you needed them. How did you feel about the fantastic offense in this scene?
I was originally going to just blue bubble the seed. Then the Coliseum happened.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, and KwehstopherWarken taking one of those counterattacks we were talking about. He will counter with Ultima if he is below around 10,000 HP. So very unfortunate, but
yeah, unfortunately, his final Kefka has been particularly rude to him, and it looks like he's going to have to redo the right-hand statue. But fortunately, as we've seen before, it's a pretty quick fight, which means that he'll be able to get right back in there soon.
So in the meantime, Sigil, I have to ask, how do you feel about the big stick seeds like this?
I like them and don't like them at the same time. I like them because it's not as much thinking in combat, but that also has me afraid because I figure my opponent's also going to have them.
Right, yeah.
Well, fortunately in this one, he did, but you managed to roll through some of those levels, and of course adding those levels adds the strength, as we were talking about earlier, and that makes your offense with those big sticks go a lot faster.
Yes.
So yeah, how did you feel about them being in the Coliseum, I guess? Because that's something that not a lot of players will necessarily go to. There were also a few floating around in the world as well, but
I only found one in the world with the Illuminous.
And there's one Zone Eater. I want to say there was another one somewhere else, but I can't forget.
That's the one I got, the Zone Eater one. I don't even know what I got on top of Fanatic's Tower. I wasn't paying attention at that point.
I think it was a flame shield. Whatever, who cares? It's not...
I don't think any of us were really paying attention. We were just like, oh, that Esper, come on, let's go.
Yeah, I didn't want to take my chances with checking Phantom Train at that point.
So is there a point when you know for a fact that you're just on the rocket train straight to the end? Like, is there a specific kind of offense you have, specific levels, anything like that, where you know that, okay, I can just go as fast as humanly possible right now. I don't really have to worry about making a good play. I just have to make the fastest one.
When I got to Illuminous.
Okay, fair.
Because that pretty much would carry me throughout the whole seed.
Absolutely, and of course we also saw that there were plenty of Atma weapons just floating around everywhere, and I noticed that you picked up an offering there before the end, so I'm pretty sure that didn't hurt either.
Yeah, that was just in case I found Magimaster.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Because at least 2 of my lanes had either Atma or VK user. So I was just going to move the offering around to wherever lane had the Magimaster, if he was around.
Fortunately, you didn't have to worry about it. Every statue we had were pretty much just kittens waiting to be taken down.
And then Straga was sitting the whole seed with the Ultima.
He just wanted to look really important, okay? The old man needs to feel like he's still in his prime, so he just had that spell in waiting. He was going to be your real MVP at the end, surely.
Yes. Make it easier just to take out the parts of the statues.
Oof, and KwehstopherWarken. again, losing a character on the way up tier 1, taking a huge counterattack from the fist, and losing Setzer on the way up. It can be kind of important, especially, that's, I guess, another minor failure with having a group of characters that are really reliant on the fight command, is it's really easy to queue up a bunch of moves that might end up causing you some problems if they happen in between some counterattacks.
Yeah, that's why, at least in tier 1, I think about if I want the guy to not do anything. Like in this case, I didn't want Setzer to attack, because I wasn't too sure if he was going to crit die.
All right. Anything that you want to, I guess, any bits of advice that you want to give our viewers about Moogle Cup and how to think about these seeds?
I guess just go with what you feel comfortable doing in the seed. And when you get comfortable doing that, just try to push the envelope a little more each time. And also, Moogle Cup is a great experience. And there's a lot of amazing mentors out there.
Oh, and that is unfortunate for Warken. As you see, 3 of his characters are now frozen, which is what we were talking about before. You can usually pull them out of it if you have a fire spell. But otherwise, you're just kind of waiting to see if you can use them again.
Oof, and unfortunately Strago does not have a fire spell. I was certain that stop was going to target him.
Was there a fire spell this whole seed?
I think there was a fire 1 on one of the Espers, but, you're not going to think about that, right? Like,
No.
you see a fire 1, and you're like, that's gibberish. I've never seen those letters before in my life.
Well, and he just got lucky as that Southern Cross came out, as you mentioned before, that actually has a fire element, despite the way that it looks. And so, fortunately, his characters are no longer frozen, and now he's able to continue and hopefully take down our nasty Kefka.
So, yeah, Strago using Mantra. This is a very handy way to get some multi-target healing. I think there was a Cure 3 on an extremely late game Esper floating around, but didn't get taught to anybody, I think, for either of you guys. So Mantra is one of the few ways that you can do some multi-target healing if you don't have access to any of the Cure spells.
One of the other little tidbits with Mantra is it is also exceedingly useful for if you get hit with Train come tier 3. It also takes care of any status ailments.
Yes, I think it's specifically, isn't it like the ones that are sort of considered like body ailments, like poison or mute and blind, like stuff like that. I don't know if it's everything. I might be wrong about that.
Correct. So it won't get rid of stone.
Okay. So we got 10 hits coming out here. Excellent. Everybody survived it this time. Moving on up to tier 3 with a mostly good party. Umaro has been handy for most of the seed, but I think eventually both of you ended up putting him on the bench for somebody else. He's still throwing around a Skyrender, though, which is pretty funny. Yeti with a giant katana.
I was so happy when the Yeti could use the VK.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we were actually discussing the difference between putting an Atma on him or putting a VK. I believe my whole point was that he doesn't take as much damage, so you can leave him at lower health, and it's easier to keep him at low health and be able to do the damage. And then I believe Turdsman said he prefers to have the Atma weapon for mostly the same reason. He doesn't take much damage, but it keeps his health higher. So, which is your preference in that situation?
I counter what my other person could use. Actually,
Yeah, that's true.
That's why I based it off of. If Setzer couldn't use the Atma weapon, then Yeti was going to have the Atma weapon just because it increases his body slam attack.
Okay, and it looks like tried to get a golem up to deal with this calmness, but unfortunately takes it, and there goes lockdown once again. Strago and Realm, KwehstopherWarken's final 2 high-level characters going into Tier 4. So the way that calmness works, I guess we didn't really get a chance to talk about it too much. It is sort of an instant death attack. It's not an instant death attack in the same way that the spells and stuff are, so the safety bit, unfortunately, will not protect you. The way that it works is it is a regular physical attack that, instead of doing damage, it sets that character's HP to 0. So the only way to prevent it from happening is to not get hit with that physical attack. Illuminas are great for that. 2 Illuminas and a couple pieces of specific armor can bring your evasion up so high that you're probably not going to get hit by it. The other 2 very popular ways are the Golem or Fenrir Espers, which will prevent you from taking physical attacks.
And as you can see here, one of the benefits of Go-Go, generally is something you would like to see early game, is that any of your breakables, any of your attacks, he can mimic. And so that was something that I actually learned in Moogle Cup that helped me immensely with some of my starts, was that you can mimic all of those breakable items since he can mimic any attack, and it doesn't use extra items. So you can use one and just keep mimicking it as long as you're not doing any other attacks. And that's free offense.
Yes, yeah, it works with Super Balls as well. So a very handy way to... ways are the Golem or Fenrir Espers. And there he goes. A very handy way to take care of some early dragons or an early boss. If you only found the one Super Ball, but you have Go-Go with you, then it can be kind of risky since you can't necessarily heal in between. That will then reset what Go-Go is going to mimic, but can be a really good way to take care of some early bosses. Oof, and Strago takes that hyperdrive to the face. We'll see. Yes, Quick, very good.
Absolutely, and this is what we were talking about, how Quick gives you 2 attacks. Hopefully this will help him pull it out. I have not been keeping track of the damage. Final Kefka actually has 60,000 HP, so we're going to hope this is all he's going to need to take him down. Otherwise, that Goner is going to be particularly unfriendly because he doesn't have extra characters up and moving. The more characters you have, the less damage they all take from that Goner attack. And there's our crack pow. Yay! GG's in the chat. KwehstopherWarken for really putting up with a very rude couple of infights.
Yes, excellent job taking that setback. Wiping to Tier 4 never feels good. It's pretty much the maximum amount of time that you can lose for the final fight, but jumping right back in afterwards and dealing with that trouble did a much better job of clearing through those tiers on the second fight as well.
And I kind of questioned him picking up that bum rush, but obviously that is what came in clutch here at the end, so I redact my statement about it.
So it looks like we got KwehstopherWarken here in the chat. GG's, how are you feeling about that?
Final Kefka is Final Kefka.
It's very true.
Absolutely,
GG's.
He was being particularly rude, but GG's and great race there.
Yeah, that was a good one. I was right on Sigil's. Apparently, I was right on Sigil's tail. I thought I had a really good run up until Final Kefka did Final Kefka.
Yeah, if you hadn't wiped there at the end, I think you would have probably been within about a minute.
Yeah.
But that Ultima counter it's something you very rarely see, but
yeah, I went for broke and I turned up Snake Eyes. So
I do think that you managed to raise all of our blood pressure during the process, so congratulations on doing that at the very least.
A little bit.
If it does help, you are actually correct. You were making some great time as you went. You actually were the first one into the tower and the first one on the switches. And it just so happened that Sigil had a few extra levels under his belt, which helped him pull ahead of you there in the end. So you were not wrong. You were making great time as you went through the seed.
Yeah, it just that the Quake counter on Tier 1 just really wrecked me. And with the lack of healing and the lack of consumables, it just slowed me down. That's all. So I think I ran the seed extremely well. I just Final Kefka did Final Kefka. There's rando gonna rando.
Yeah, at a certain point, you can't quite blame. Like, there's obviously some bad plays that can be made, but I don't think I really saw any from either of you two on this one. It was just the way that the RNG happened to slide just was a little bit in Sigil's favor.
Yeah.
At some points, I was in the menu too much.
Oh, sure,
which is
whomst
funny,
amongst us?
which is funny because Sigil and I had a session, Thursday and Friday or something,
Yes.
and that was the big topic of conversation. Was I was in the menu too much across a couple of seeds, so the fact that he was in the menu too much is just funny.
I couldn't remember who had my experience egg at times.
Yeah. No, I bought the experience egg, stuck it on Strago, and left it till he could get bum rush. Then I threw it on lock because he had my VK when I got it.
I put it on Yeti first, and then I did Opera House, then Coliseum, and found Illuminus in the Coliseum.
Oh yes, so did I. I went there at level 3. And I'm like, Magicites for Illuminas? Yes, please. And I traded 3 Magicites for 3 Illuminas. I'm just like, okay, I'm off and running now. This is
Yeah,
great.
then I just put the experience egg on lock.
Yeah. I got a Valiant Knife later. And I'm like, okay, well, Valiant Knife's going on, once Strago was up to bum rush levels. I put the VK or the experience egg on lock so he could VK offering.
So yeah, thank you both very much for joining in on this showcase here. We've asked Sigil, so KwehstopherWarken, is there anything that you would like to say about the Moogle Cup before we let you all go?
Yeah, so, about the game in general, this is the best rando ever on the best game ever, period, end of discussion. If you disagree, fight me. So there's that. But Moogle Cup is our kind of our learning flag set. So great way to get into the game, kind of learn what it's all about. A little bit easier, a little bit tuned more for beginners. So it's a great way to learn the game. And I think we have one of the best communities in rando. Again, if you disagree, fight me. But no, we literally have people who will fight each other to get to help you when you have questions, VOD reviews, mentor sessions, all that kind of great stuff. So, and like I said, me and Sigil just had a mentor session, I think it was earlier this week. And the fact that, we're sitting here doing this, a couple days later, and with the exception of Final Kefka doing Final Kefka things, it was really that close. That shows the skill and the helpfulness of everyone in the community. So now is a great time to get involved. We've got our War of the Magi tournament going. We've got a Moogle Cup tournament that'll get started once we've got enough people, which is just our mentor tournament. We run those whenever we have enough people to run it. So, sign up. Come join us.
All right, very well said. Thank you very much. And if you do want to sign up, all the information that you need is in the Discord, which you can find a link to that by going to ff6worldscollide.com. There's a bunch of links there, as well as the tools to roll your own roll your own seeds if you want to. But we have tons of stuff going on. There is, like KwehstopherWarken said, there's a monthly race going on right now, the War of the Magi. Those are a lot more varied flag sets. There is the Ultros Underground, run by One Free Fits, if you want to jump in on that. And all of these weeklies and monthlies are great because you can connect with the other people that are playing and kind of share tips, sort of figure out exactly what other people are doing, and definitely level up your own game as well. So yeah, please do check those sites out and sign up for the Moogle Cup if you want to. Dragon Lady K, anything you'd like to say?
Honestly, I just want to thank our racers for tonight. This was a great showcase for the Moogle Cup, showing these flags and this experience. And of course, again, with this being one of our mentors, Sigil. Actually, Sigil was, not that he would toot his own horn here, was actually the mentor of the winner of our last Moogle Cup, which happens to be Actual JP, who we've seen in chat. He and I were in the finals of the last one, which was fantastic. So again, from personal experience, I can tell you that the Moogle Cup is absolutely fantastic. We have amazing mentors and a fantastic community, and this is definitely the time to join. I believe that we're trying to amp that up and get it moving, and as soon as we have 16 people for that, we will be boosting that off here soon. So hopefully you guys will join us and be a part of probably the best community I've ever been a part of.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I love it here. So again, thank you very much to the racers for putting on a show for us. Thank you, Dragon Lady K, for hanging out in the comms booth with me. And biggest thank you to Drinkskaloo for managing the restream, pressing the buttons and flicking the dials in the back. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Goo is the real MVP.
Yeah, thank you to the Restream team, comms, all those people. Thank you to RPG Limit Break for letting us show off a little bit.
I'm just echoing what Warken said.
All right, thank you all out there, and y'all have a wonderful evening.
Work.